向生命历历，虚空换岁月，放心当下喜。Spring is here, the flowers breathe their fragrance to the sun. Mountains, rivers, the earth itself are just thus come. 梅子不落地，向生命历历，虚空换岁月，放心当下。Alrighty, there we go. Good morning, everybody. This is Heng. It's a pleasure to be with you. Let's see here. I need to readjust that. How is everyone doing? 大家好，阿弥陀佛。我叫恒师。Today, let's see here. Don't say those changes. Good. It is Saturday, September 23rd, here in the Gold Coast of Queensland. 今天是星期六啊，这个是9月23。If you're in California, it is the 22nd, and it's a Friday afternoon. It's the evening time in Europe. Glad to have you with us today. We're going to be looking into Master Empty Cloud's picture biography, and wow, do we have an interesting episode today to look at some stories that are unforgettable and immediately applicable to anybody who has available to them a book. Yeah, especially a Buddhist book. All right, let's get going. Today, our Dharma request comes from Europe, from Norway. Petter is going to be our Dharma requester, so I'll bring up the welcome screen and pick up my bell. I'm going to ring the bell 3 times and invite you all to join me in making 3 half bows to the Buddha. Here we go. That's the first bow. Here's the second bow. And a third bow. All right, here we go. Now, 1 second here. All right, Petter, if you'd like to request Dharma, please do it now.
Okay, thank you. 恭敬大德圣听，为此法会第一觉众生，听转妙法轮教导我们如何疗伤脱死离苦得乐，诸正无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi sammyao sanputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samyao sanputosye.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. but now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All right. Peter, thank you very much for the Dharma request. I'd be happy to accord. Welcome, everyone. I want to send my appreciation to those translators who are making what I'm saying available in Chinese and in Vietnamese so I can focus on the English and have one fewer thing to worry about. That makes a big difference when you're trying to be both the engineer and the talent and the et cetera, et cetera. So also, folks who are happily putting this lecture out online, very much appreciate your work. Excuse me. Oh, it's early in the morning here. Now, 我所讲的英文，如果各位要听一种流利的普通话的翻译，这个你的 Zoom 这个软体有办法，那个右下角右边那个下边就有一个地球 interpretation， 那里有 Chinese 就好了，你可以听中文。And for those of you who would like to hear a very fluent Vietnamese translation, you should know that it is available in the chat. If you go into the chat and you'll see our tireless coordinator, Chen Yu's, giving you a link to a Vietnamese translation. I'm going to save that for myself for the future. There we go. Yes, all right. Also, those of you who in the future might want to, excuse me here, and there we go, might want to request Dharma yourself, we would love to make that opportunity available to you. So please, there we go. Where are we here? Come back. There we go. Please send an email to Chen Yu and she will set you up so you can request Dharma yourself. I'd like to say that the Chochechno Ohlone people practice spiritual connections to the earth and to all creation here on their ancestral land for tens of thousands of years, and today we acknowledge them as traditional custodians and original storytellers of these lands. We offer our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. Interesting. I have to figure this out. 就说Chochechno Ohlone人在他们祖先的土地上修炼着他们与土地和万物的精神联系已有数万年。今天我们承认他们是这些土地的传统监护人和原始讲故事的人，并且向他们过去、现在和新兴的长老们，我们表示敬意，以及主权从未被割让的所有第一民族人民们表示敬意。Now, the question that brings up is, I'm in Australia, so does my presence here in Queensland require me to acknowledge the Kombumerri people? The lecture was originally set up in Berkeley, and that's where the Ohlone people are. So probably I should acknowledge where I am, I think. Maybe that's what I'll do from now on. All right. The problems of technology. The bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. Oh, listen to that bell. 众生传 still going. 3000界内，佛法扬万亿国中，共熏起法界和平，利益报他诺后的。 All right. Right there. This is today's story. You remember last week, Master Empty Cloud saw Buddhists for the first time. He saw monastics, he saw monks, and he was moved. And he wanted to play with their Dharma instruments. And just sneezed. So that was his first contact in this life with the Buddhist, the organized traditional Buddhist religion. And as Shifu's verse reminded us, he said, eternal words and filial thoughts transmitted from past to present. He carefully performed ancestral rites, sincerely repaying compassion. Relying on Samadhi's power of aiding and maintaining, offenses as numerous as Ganges sands were completely wiped away. 用信孝思古今传，正中追远报月报恩于养成三昧加持力，河沙罪业悉消除。小人小出小捐. There we go. So this is last week's verse, but think about how our karma, the thing that puts us into our bodies and puts us into the situations of our lives, the people we meet and the food we eat and the way the country we live in, that's a very fluid, dynamic, moving quantity. It's kind of easy and sloppy or uneducated to think about karma as a result, as something static and dead and fixed. The way this verse would portray it, the way this part of the story teaches us, is that the young man who was, 13 at this time, by seeing the monks, see the photo, the picture, not the photo, the engraving, the future Master Xuyun, the young man, is seeing monks sitting at the table with their wooden fish, with their sutra books, and he is making offerings. There's the ancestral altar. His grandmother died, or was it his auntie? His grandmother. And here's the brazier, the stove for burning the plaques and all. And by seeing them, his karmic clouds, the obscurations, the covers that covered over his nature were wiped away by these acts of goodness. And young people are so, when you are a young person, you haven't done that much nastiness in this body to increase the covers over your nature. And so your karmic bank account is easily adjusted. So the point I'm making is how fluid karma is, particularly when we're young. And Shifu's verse, Heng sha zui ye xi shao juan. So by encountering the Sangha in this way, there is a change in the karmic bank account of our young man. And things start to move very rapidly at age 12 or 13. Okay, so that's interesting how Shifu's verse points to the dynamic nature of karma. Okay, we are now moving forward, and due to the kindness of our coordinators who enjoy these stories and want to move them forward, we have something quite wonderful. We have a Romanized version of of the story in the verse. People are going to say, "Can I have it? Can I have it?" Not yet. Not yet. This is not available publicly. I am sharing it with you. When it is more mature and maybe complete, we'll have one for you. Meanwhile, I get to use it and make fewer mistakes in the Chinese. Ready? 公家中藏有古书甚丰富，简约中得I'm sorry，简约中得香山传一册，内容乃言观世音菩萨之事迹，读后所受影响甚深。于是决意将来出家修道，不羡子受之荣，不求诸门之富，淡泊以明志，清高而力行。Okay, that's the story. And Shifu's verse goes, 发菩萨心，悟本然，胸怀壮志，领霄汉。而今已有香山传，汝公之志，望后贤。Beautiful. And takes us right where we're going. Gee, look at that link. Reading the story of Incense Mountain, resolving to leave the home life. The storerooms of our master's house were full of very old books. Looking them over, he found a volume called The Story of Incense Mountain, which described the life of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Guanyin. Upon reading it, he was deeply influenced and was determined to go forth from home in the future to cultivate the way. He did not long for the honor of the purple cord of an official, nor did he wish to have a red door indicative of wealth. He decided that a life of simplicity would exemplify his resolution to practice pure and lofty ideals. And a verse says, resolving his thoughts on the Bodhi mind, he understood what is basic. This ideal he firmly embraced beyond the rise of galaxies. Now there is a sequel to the story of Incense Mountain, by which others will be inspired to seek sagehood in the future. Oh man, there is so much here. Okay, I'll trust our translators to convey what I want to say. Storeroom full of very old books. Another way to call that, a library. There's a library. And our young man, here he is. Look at him in there. People say he's a young man, but he's lost all his hair. No, no. That's the style. That was the style in the Qing dynasty, that you shaved the front and grew the back long, called a queue. Okay, what has he got? There's incense burning in the censer. Here's the nice smoke going up. There's an inscription on the wall. Something has been inked with a brush, famous words, famous calligraphy. And notice the stack of books, some in scrolls, some bound already in binding. And it probably says Xiang Shan Chuan or Zhuan. Here's scrolls that are still in the scroll format. I don't know why this tail. Oh, that's probably a ruyi. That's some implement there. And here's another bookshelf. So it's the family library. And among the books there is one called Xiang Shan, what's it called? Chuan Zhuan. It's a single volume. It's only a single chapter. And in Xiangshan Zhuan, there is the story of Guanyin Bodhisattva when she was Princess Miaoshan. This book is I couldn't find a copy of it quickly online. Is anybody, that's one for YC or Yihuan or somebody there who's quick with resources. Can you dig up a copy of traditional Xiangshan Zhuan? I did find a scholarly treatise about it and the story that it tells. And that is right here. Let's see here. Wilt Idima has studied it, and okay, here's a fully annotated translation of Bao Juan, Bao Shu, Bao Shan. Translated is preceded by introduction that discusses the origin and text and the genre that it belongs to. Similarities and difference between female saints' lives in medieval Europe. Now, it's too bad that Wilt had to pass on filial piety as a term. We aren't using that word. Filial piety, no, not. Filial respect, filial regard, both are good. Here we go. This is that link in Google if you can't get it. I have not seen that book. I can't recommend it, but if anybody is interested to pursue it further, there it is. So we are saying, excuse me. One moment. I'm going to close that. There we go. Not that. Up. Put that away. Bring this up. This is an important thing to say. Okay. Xiao Shun. Different. Shun. One. Xiao Dao. Okay. These two words, Xiao, Xiao, Shun. Or, that's a little too large, thank you. How about that better? There we go. Or, Xiao, Dao. There we go. Okay, Xiao Shun or Xiao Dao. Xiao by itself, just that word by itself, is Xiao. Okay, there we go. Is somebody at some point labeled this practice, this virtue in Chinese as filial piety. And the problem is piety and the word pious, let's see, Pious, is what? A pejorative? No, it's not meant to be negative, but it's a virtue no one wants. To be pious, it's hard to... In Chinese, definitely there is this, a pious person is someone who is 拘谨, someone who's uptight, someone who's 教条主义, 教条主义, a fundamental, someone whose belief in principles influences their behavior beyond simple humanity. That's a pious person. Someone, in English we'd say uptight, someone who is stuffy, someone who is holier than thou, someone who holds themselves as more pure than you. That's piety. Someone whose faith overwhelms their fundamental kindness. That's piety. So we talk about Puritans who would burn people at the stake if they disagreed with their views. That's piety, can lead you to that kind of thing. This has nothing to do with filiality. Filial itself, that word, is already unknown. Let's see. I'm going to do a little experiment. I'm going to open up my phone and bring up a note page and type in piety. Let's see. Filiality. Type in filiality. Filiality. And it wants Oh, I typed it wrong. Here we go. Try again. Filiality. Okay, it accepted it. That's progress. There were times in the past when it would autocorrect. It would think, oh, that's not the right word. So at least it's in the vocabulary now. But filial piety, no. When you're filial, you're not pious. That's wrong. That's, and in China, interesting. How did piety become a perversion of real filiality, which is recognizing kindness and wanting to repay it? 知恩报恩. Maybe because in China, already filiality became stiff and uptight and Puritan and distorted from its original meaning. Possibly. So maybe in China, filial piety is actually the translation of what happened to genuine filiality. So, recognizing kindness and wanting to repay the happiness you feel. There's filiality, okay? So we want to, we're gonna go, there we go. It's not filial piety, it is, there we go. Filial respect is the way we are now. We are retranslating filial respect. 孝顺,孝道. So my point is that Wilt, the translator, personal salvation and filial piety. No, that just carries on this wrong view of filiality. So here, anyway, this book is available, paperback, $30. If you want to buy the hardback, it's way more. Hard to find. No, there's no electronic version. So just to say, there's that. Back to our story. 话归真传. Okay, that's one lesson. So, of one principle from our story here. What is going on with Xiang Shan Chuan? Shang Shan Chuan. Here it is. Xiang Shan Baojuan. That's the name that I found out here. Xiang Shan Baojuan. Here's the Chinese entry in Wikipedia, which is, it says, this is Guanyin Pusa Ben Xing Jing, Ben Heng Jing. That's the other name. The Sutra of Guanyin Bodhisattva's fundamental practices. It's also called 大乘法宝上山宝卷. There we go. 中国佛教说常文学文本. This is Chinese Buddhism's just a fundamental text of Chinese Buddhism. It's one chapter long. 于明代前期成书. It's been around as a book from the beginning of the Ming Dynasty, so in the 1600s. 但其中的主要故事可能是北宋杭州上天主寺. It probably comes from before the Ming Dynasty, from where in Hangzhou's Upper India monastery, famous monastery in Hangzhou. Pu Ming Chanshi, the monk called Pu Ming, who in 1103 wrote it. This is in the Song, so the Bei Song. So probably the main story comes from the Song dynasty in Hangzhou at Shangtianzhu Si. That's an important monastery in the past. Xiangshan 是古时主要妙山, the mountain of fragrance, incense mountain. So the title would be the special story from Fragrance Mountain, from Perfume Mountain, Incense Mountain. It's the character, the main character there is Miao Shan Gongzhu, Princess Miao Shan. Miao is wondrous, Shan is goodness. So her name is Wonderful Goodness. She is a character that this wonderful story is sort of like, it's sort of in the same category as Ulambana, right? People know we just went through Ulambana this year about Madhyayana saving his mother. Well, Miao Shan Gongzhu, Princess Miao Shan, is in the same category, not as ancient. She wasn't one of the Buddhist disciples, but she was a semi-legendary princess. So she's kind of historical, kind of legendary, whose filial regard was so powerful, she was willing to harm her person before she would change her principles. 现孙最早版本 17. Okay, there is a early story, 1773, which is preserved in Hangzhou. Possibly we might be able to look this up this year. Yeah. 受香山宝传的故事源自北宋是观音菩萨信仰的圣地。河南汝州香山寺. There's a monastery called Fragrant Mountain Monastery in Henan, in a place called Ruzhou, okay, which is a place where faith in Guanyin Bodhisattva is very profound. 宝卷中国宗教说长文学的文本. So, 宝卷 means special book, really valuable stories. 香山寺方丈怀化藏有一文. There's a story about the abbot from Xiangshan Monastery. 讲述观世音菩萨化身妙山公主的故事. The story of how Guanyin Bodhisattva transformed herself into Princess Miaoshan. And in 1100, let's see, took this story, this book, it was printed then, in the Song. 1100. What was going on in North America in 1100? Well, Native Americans, indigenous folks. What was going on in Europe in 1100? So let's see, the essay, the story was given to Jiang Zhiqi in Ruzhou. Jiang Zhiqi Ren Shi Gu Wen. This gentleman embellished the original story, 写成大悲菩萨传, the greatly compassionate Bodhisattva story, and carved it into a stone, carved it into a stone bay. Used a chisel, carved the characters into the stone. 大悲菩萨即观世音菩萨. This is Guanyin Bodhisattva, and the inscription in the stone now exists at Xiangshan Si, carved in the stone. 自从苗山公主的故事俗称流行. The story of Miao Shan flowed on into society, became popularized. 香山宝卷故事情节及改编自大悲菩萨卷. So that's the original story that Master Empty Cloud found in his dad's library, was originally inscribed from the 1100s, inscribed in a stone, carried on. You can still find it there. And this is a quite lovely episode. Here's the Wikipedia in Chinese. Anybody who wants to... Okay, here we go. There's, if you want to read the page that I'm looking at, there it is. Okay, we found it. Xiangshan Baojuan, Guanyin Pusa Ben Xingjing. It's a C-text. Okay, we got it. Right there. Okay, here it is. Lovely. Thank you for that. Bogdan mentions that in my generation, a pious would be a great compliment. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Indicating, I know. Yeah. Here we go. Let me move this. We've got a link here from Lily, Changlihua. Ah, so it is online, and here it is. There's the story. That's the whole thing right there. Okay. Xiangshan Da Bei Pusa Juan. Okay, there it is. For those of you who is, go to the chat, our chat box. That is where these goodies are. Thank you, everyone, for your research. The print version, yes. Okay. So, Bogdan mentions that pious was a compliment. Piety, in its positive expression, indicates faith. So a pious Jew, in stories that come out of Eastern Europe, was someone who carried the Torah with him and would refer to the 5 books, the Pentateuch, during the day to help. So close to God, somebody whose faith guided them and worked for them. That's the positive side of pious. Yeah. Filial piety doesn't do that. Back to our story. Take a look here. So, here we have a young man who is influenced by good books. I want to raise my hand and say I can identify. Me too. Me too. My father's bedside reading table was my window to the world. And I wish I could say that it was always a positive window that the world it opened into was a good world. Not necessarily. My dad was fairly widely read. He had biographies, he had history, and I would kind of look at those and flip the pages. But my dad would go off to work, and I would sneak down to his bedroom and see what he was reading. And I would take the books off to my reading chair, which was I had a red, a chair with red vinyl and white wooden arms. And it was under a window, and that was my reading chair. And I spent so many hours in that chair launching my mind into the world of fiction, of biography, of romance, of adventure, so many books that I read from my red reading chair in my room. And about time for my dad to come home from work, I would hustle back down to his bedroom, replace the book in any bookmarker, put it back just the way it had been, so he didn't know I'd been reading it. And of course he did, and he didn't like that, but I wouldn't stop me. I read all of James Bond, 007, Ian Fleming novels, all of Travis McGee, John D. MacDonald, adventure, mystery stories, true crime, lots of westerns, Louis L'Amour and Hondo, and all of these male heroes, often toxic as James Bond, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I read all of those from my father's reading table. And on that table, I first encountered the Dharma Bums. My dad got a copy of Jack Kerouac's novel, and there was the word Dharma. And inside there was the word Diamond Sutra and Lotus Sutra and Prajna. I encountered through Kerouac, my dad's reading table, I first encountered words of Dharma. That was my very first. And it pushed me into the local public library, where I first encountered the Six Patriarch Sutra and the Tao Te Ching, Chinese language. My door that opened into Dharma, came from reading these books. So look at this picture of young Master Xuyun in the future, who's look at that, just that lovely shot of the young man's mind opening as through the printed word, through the magic of books, which are endangered species right now. He discovered his mind and made a resolve. When we read these books, things happen in that ocean of consciousness that we call the mind. And there's magic here. So I know on the call today, we have, there we go. We have authors of books. Looking at Brian and others who have already produced books that wake up the spirit. We have Bright Moon was just published by Brian and illustrated by Katrina. And this is a wonderful, wholesome practice. Let's see here. Bernie and Xingfei mentioned that John Blofeld tells the story of Miao Shan in Bodhisattva of Compassion, Mystical Tradition of Guanyin chapter. Good, excellent. I will look for that. 中国大陆有部电视剧《观音菩萨传》，和这个内容差不多了。Okay, thank you, Gao Lifang. Okay, yeah, in China there is a televised serial called Guanyin Bodhisattva's Turning, which has similar, is from the Miaoshan Gongzhu story. Okay, so this is already in legend, and I'm going to save the chat. Did you all know you can, can you save the chat? I can save the chat. I don't know if you can do that when you're not the host. But there's 3 dots down at the bottom of your chat screen, and it gives you save chat. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so thank you for the suggestions. I'm saying that the authors of good books are doing good. And for young men like me, who, like this young man in our story, are influenced strongly by good books, oh, how important to be able to plant seeds in people's minds, in young minds, of goodness, and what it means to be a good man. The stories that I actually, this is the time to tell my story. Having steeped my mind in what we now call toxic masculinity, ways of being a man, how to grow up, what is a model, what do you want to do with your life? Well, I absorbed lots of violence and lots of harming. James Bond, by Ian Fleming, was a character, a fictional character, but he was so captivating, and he lit up the wrong parts of the mind, so that women are simply there to conquer and to dominate. And if you see someone you don't like, it's perfectly all right to kill them with your gun or with your knife or in the bomb, the way that James Bond is empowered to kill people. That was what I learned is acceptable ways of being a man. When I left home, and I recall meditating in Tathagata Monastery, and I made the resolve that I was going to replace those stories with wholesome stories, that I was going to write Buddhist-inspired novels of young men, maybe young women, but I was able to write about young men who met the Dharma, who went through doors into the flower garland universe and had their minds expanded intensely and did good deeds and met heroes and courageously took a step in beyond their limits into something that they were not capable of without the guidance and the inspiration of goodness. So that was a vow I made, and I haven't done it yet. Haven't written that story. That's certainly what propelled me out into Three Steps, One Vow for sure. But I wanted to put it between covers in a book. So maybe I need to collaborate with somebody who might even be on the call today. Hope so. So that's one of my goals. Because books are powerful, and here it is. Look at the difference. Upon reading it, he was influenced and determined to go forth from home to cultivate. Look at these phrases. He didn't long for the honor of the purple cord of a public servant. The Chinese says, 不羡子受之荣. These are phrases from Chinese culture. He didn't long for the purple cord and the honor that distinguished. Only public servants, officials who passed the official exam could dress that way. It indicated that they were elevated in society. 不求诸门之富. He didn't want the vermilion door. What's a vermilion door? The red door, indicating that you've got money. If you don't have money, if you're poor, you don't paint your doors red. So he didn't want that stuff. What he wanted instead was a life of simplicity so that he could practice pure and lofty ideals. How good. How good. And then Shifu's verse says it. 发菩萨心悟本然. He made this bodhisattva's resolve to wake up to Ban Ran. He understood what is basic. The fundamental source. 胸怀庄志凌霄汉. The ideal, he firmly embraced beyond, let's see, Ling Xiaohan. Yeah, that's a pretty good translation. But here today, we have a sequel to the story of Incense Mountain. 今亦有香山传, right? Or 传山传. The Bao Zhen. There's another chapter of this Guanyin book being written in the life of Master Empty Cloud, 如公之智王后显, by which others will be inspired to seek sagehood in the future. 如公之智, like Master Empty Cloud's resolve, we're looking forward to future worthy people. Isn't that good? Look at the power of books. Oh boy. It's paper or bamboo or some other, it could be a Kindle reader, but between those covers there is magic going forth. Because why? The mind can be influenced. The mind is fluid, like space, like water. It's moving and it contains the seeds of good and evil, or nothing in between, or confusion. We drug it, we dull it. But a good book can just move you. I used to get high on the stories that I read. There's so many. Maybe you all can relate to a book that you read at one point that was, and I want to say that illustrated stories are wonderful too. Comics or books that have been illustrated. Bright Moon. Should we do it again? Let's see. Here we are. Now this is Australia. I don't know. Storybook. Is that what will happen? It's not here in Australia yet. Yeah. Okay. Well, you got to market it over here in Australia. Okay. Our time is now come to an end. Brian Conroy's Bright Moon is a beautifully told picture book. Oh, you got an endorsement from New York City. Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, actually, Cynthia says that it was amazing that my dad found Dharma Bums. Uh, no, actually, take a look, Cynthia. This was quite Jack Kerouac's novels were popular. The Dharma Bums, right here. Was this the one that I saw? No, it wasn't that. This was not the cover. Would it have been this one? This is a no modern fiction. Uh-uh. Oh, it might have been On the Road. No, it was the Dharma Bums. On the Road. Kerouac's fiction was popular, so it wasn't unusual that my father would encounter this. On the Road. Here we go. Yeah. And it could have been that one. Interestingly, an essential classic. Yeah, so it is quite popular. Lots of different versions. That's Kerouac himself. Ah, this is the one. That's it right there. That's the very cover. Yes, my dad had that on his. This is the Bible of the Beat Generation. The explosive bestseller tells all about today's wild youth and their frenetic search for experience and sensation. That's the book right there. That's the cover that I saw as a young man. And then the Dharma Bums followed it. On the Road. He's writing about Gary Snyder, actually. There it is. You can buy it today for 367 Australian dollars. Yes, indeed. Wild Drives Across America. Jaffe Ryder was Gary Snyder. In a frantic search for kicks and truth. Hallelujah. All righty, there we go. Yes, indeed. Okay, here we are. Ah, thank you, Katrina. Bright Moon. This is it. This is a brand new, newly published storybook by Brian, who is on the call today, and Katrina, who is the illustrator. It's beautifully done. Here's the back cover. Every year, during a Mid-Autumn Festival, Ming listens as grandmother tells stories of the moon. She grows into a young woman and passes on the story herself. The wisdom in the story is a guiding light for Ming, illuminating her path like a bright moon. Beautifully done. Yeah, I have a copy that's inscribed. It's very meaningful and valuable to me. Here is our author. There we go. Brian, multiple books published. Look at that. So, being able to, you don't hear me complaining, there's Brian's publications. Being able to produce books that young people can read that will give them not wrong or distorted values, but will give them faith and trust in their hearts and goodness and kindness, knowing that goodness is its own reward. What a wonderful thing to do with your time, with your life. So, Shanzai, Shanzai. Should we dedicate merit? Please do check out the resources on today's chat. We've got a lot of springboards into goodness today. And I might add, if you have a If you're in a state where your governor is banning books, replace your leadership. More books, fewer governors, like that. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. That's not all. We also want to bow to the Buddha, invite you to join me. First bow. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. That will do it for us for today. See you for our Avatamsaka Sutra lecture tomorrow, perhaps. It's at 12:30 here in Australia, 10:30 in the morning in Taiwan and China and Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, and it is 7:30 p.m. in California time, Saturday night. All right. Thank you all for joining. We're done. Bye, everybody. Amitofo.